Joining me now is Pranjul Bhandari, Chief Economist, India and Indonesia at HSBC. Madan Sabnavis is Chief Economist, Bank of Baroda. Rajdeep Kumar, noted senior economist, former Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog. And Professor Santosh Mehrotra, author Reviving Jobs and Agenda for Growth, visiting professor at the University of Bath. I appreciate all of you joining us. Pranjul, to you first. What's your big takeaway from the economic survey? I'll ask that to all four of you, but why don't you start first?
Yeah, thank you, Rajdeep. Great to be here. So look, it's second term, it's second innings for our finance minister. And as you know, in Test cricket, second innings are a great opportunity to improve your batting average and take your team towards victory. So this is a very important part and time in the economy. And I think it's very important to get the context right. Where are we? What's gone right? What's gone wrong? How do we course correct if we have to? And I think taking a step back, a couple of things are going very well. Number one, the government has been doing a lot of infrastructure investment, which has been good for growth. Number two, there is a lot of real estate activity. A lot of jobs in the construction sectors have been created. But on the other hand, consumption is quite weak, quite tepid. It's in the low single digits. And that's really what needs to be addressed at this point of time if you really want GDP growth to continue to be in the 6.5% to 7% range. So I think this is the big challenge we have in front of us. Now that we have the budget tomorrow, I think a couple of things they've been doing right, and my sense is they should continue to do that. One of them is bringing down the fiscal deficit year after year, a very important way to keep macro stability intact, which is important to make growth a multi-year phenomenon rather than just a single-year phenomenon. They've also been doing a lot of capital expenditure on roads, rails. They should continue to do that. But they haven't probably been doing much on consumption. And I think that's where they really need to beef up, to do more of a rural stimulus, welfare stimulus, perhaps more in the housing sector at this point of time, but in a responsible way. And it's possible this time because the government is actually more revenue rich than it has been in a very long time. It's got the RBI dividend. It's got great tax collections. If it brings all of that together, it can give you both fiscal consolidation and a little bit of the consumption push that was missing from the budget that we had back in February.
Interesting, Pranjul. There, Professor Rajdeep Kumar, Dr. Rajdeep Kumar, your big takeaway from the economic survey, is it as rosy as the government suggests? Are there any risk factors that you see? Pranjul has listed some of them.
Thanks, Rajdeep. Great to be here. I agree with the economic survey that India is on the cusp of a real sort of sustained growth trajectory of 7%, 6.5%, 7% going forward. But at the same time, we have to remember, and I think the economic survey could have done better by pointing out that this growth has to be accompanied with a green transition. We have to reduce our carbon footprint at the same time. And that makes it quite tough. And that really requires for a kind of a sui generis policy package because there are no models to follow in this regard. Now, on the other one, so the other thing that I wanted to emphasize is that the consumption has been weak, as Pranjul has said, but the way out is not to give handouts or some temporary stimulus, etc. But we have to tackle the real problem, which is employment. And the ILO IHD report that was released in 2024 does point out that our graduates unemployment is quite high. Even the PLFH reports say that while the unemployment has come down, 56% of those employed are self-employed, 18.2% of those are employed in family labor without being paid, etc. If we have to improve the employment in the unorganized sector and the SME sector, and for the graduates, and for because unless we do that, we can't hope to raise consumption in a sustained manner. Consumption goes up on the basis of a permanent income hypothesis. That's when people start spending, and I think that's the one to tackle.
Okay.
And therefore, what we need really is a set of data on employment to which everybody agrees, on the basis of which policy can be formulated. At the moment, we don't have that. So I think that's the downside risk. And just one other, Rajdeep, which is that the economic survey doesn't tell us the rate of growth of our exports, especially of our merchandise exports, which are generally employment intensive. And I hope the budget tomorrow will tell us some measures on how to focus on expanding India's share in world trade, because that is what will generate the required employment. And that's the key to raise consumption, which has been the driver of economic growth in India for decades, and we have to bring it back.
Okay. Interesting again. Professor Sabnavis, your big takeaway from the economic survey, glass half full or half empty?
No, actually, Rajdeep, if you see, most of the data which has been presented in the economic survey is something which is already known. So I don't think there is anything new which the economic survey presents, because I think our statistical system is fairly regular in terms of this high frequency data which you get. But I think a significant point which has been made in the economic survey is on private investment. You know, it's said very clearly that to go forward, there needs to be a tripartite agreement with states as well as private sector. That's along with the center to move forward. And quite significantly, it's been pointed out that even though there was a corporate tax cut which came in 2019, we really haven't seen private sector investment pick up. So I think the responsibility is really on the corporate sector to build on investment, something which has not been highlighted earlier. But the other ones always keep asking for favors, saying that we need something.
If I may intervene, that's been said for the last ever since the government gave a corporate tax cut, and we're now 5 years down the line. We've been expecting private investment to pick up. There are some green shoots, but clearly many believe it's not across sectors.
No, absolutely. It's not broad-based, because you see the private sector invests only when there's a return on capital. That's the difference between the government investing in capex, where it doesn't have to look out for a return. So I think that's the fundamental issue. The private sector is not investing because you don't have enough demand. You have surplus capacity. So if you're looking at industries like, say, related to infrastructure, there is investment taking place. So it's not to say investment is not taking place. But the private sector will definitely hold back. It's not going to invest just to make us happy and make sure that the investment rate goes up. So I think this is what the economic survey has concentrated on, saying we need to have the private sector investment picking up. And the second issue is, of course, on food inflation, for which I think there is no short-term solution. It's easy to say that we need to increase production of pulses, oilseeds, but to my mind, I think what is required is deep-rooted reforms in the agricultural sector, something which has been missing for quite some time now.
Professor Mehrotra, you've been a critic of this government. You've looked at the economic survey. Your big takeaway?
I think everything that needed to be said, Rajdeep, has already been said by my three distinguished friends. But let me pick on a few things that they have talked about and which require real movement forward. So it was just mentioned about employment data on which everyone needs to agree. Well, how will everyone agree if the PLFS says one thing, and PLFS data, unfortunately, Rajdeep, is not compliant with international definitions and international norms, and yet the government sells that narrative. And the RBI funded study, let me say, it is not an RBI study, unfortunately makes the same mistake. So unless we fix that, we will never have employment data that everyone will agree. Point one. Point two, I find the great claim that in FY 2024 that our GDP is 24% higher than it was in 2021 is neither here nor there, for the simple reason that you and I know that the economy contracted by nearly 6% in that year. Now, the problem is that the government's whole narrative is essentially based upon building on what they're calling the new economy. But everyone knows, as does Pranjul, that the new economy is barely 15% of our total economy. The new economy can only pull along so much. And I remember reading a piece by Pranjul which says that, all we are getting is 6.5% growth, which is precisely what IMF, World Bank, and the OECD have predicted for the rest of the 30s, that we will have, they project 6.5% growth. And that's not even going to fetch us the 70 million jobs. She said, we need 10 to 12 million jobs, not 7 million jobs per annum. because many more young people are joining the labor force. So unless the strategy is laid out for an inclusive policy, and everyone's hinted at that, we are short of demand, which is why in the last 10 years, investment to GDP has not exceeded 31%, when in fact between 2004 and 14, it consistently was between 31 and 38%. That's why you had 7.8% growth. And for the last 10, you've had 5.8. So we are all sort of agreed what the nature of the problem is. There's no...
Can I stop you to look for the solution then? Because I want to go
coming.
one round. You know,
I'm coming.
Let's start with Pranjul and come solution one by one. Let's give each Pranjul, give us a solution. I think the economic survey identifies the problems as it is meant to do, but the prescription is based, many believe, more on hope than reality, because as I said, kickstarting private investment has been spoken of for the last few years. Agriculture distress has been spoken out for the last couple of years. Where are the solutions? And what is the solution?
Yeah. Okay, so no easy answers, but let me try with three of them. Number one, what I started with. I think we do need a consumption stimulus at this point of time, given that rural India and the informal sector have gone through back-to-back many shocks. Pandemic, climate change, even climate change changing its pattern, heat waves, not just low rains, droughts, dry spells in the midst of monsoon seasons. All of this has really played havoc with rural India. So I think we do need, a round of welfare spending to basically get people up to a particular minimum standard. Only after that, my sense is that consumption will start picking up and domestic investment will respond to that by putting up more factories, more machinery, and we'll see more investment and therefore more jobs. So consumption stimulus is my first point. My second point is reforms. We all know we need reforms, ease of doing business, land, labor, power, connectivity. All of these reforms, I think, is the second thing that we need to keep working on.
No, because Pranjal, just to stop you, the economic survey talks of bottom-up structural reforms. What does it mean? What do bottom-up structural reforms mean for the lay person?
Well, look, I suppose, trying to really identify what's coming in the way of more investment of factories, sprouting up in a more rapid speed, and really trying to address that. So, problem with land acquisition, with labor laws, with ease of doing business, too much of regulatory cholesterol, and really, trying to basically get an answer to all of that. But I think a third point that I wanted to make is this big opportunity that we are in the midst of, which is this whole rejigging of supply chains, manufacturing diversification across the world. Is this once in a lifetime opportunity we have to attract FDI into our economy? And here, I think the news is not that great. FDI inflows in the economy have actually fallen 60% over the last year. There are many reasons. The economic survey has also got into it. But in terms of solution, my sense is rather than just going after high-tech FDI, which we have successfully done, for example, electronics, we should now start going after mid-tech FDI in areas like textiles, food product, footwear. These are areas where you actually get jobs, and there's so much of rejigging. Factories, actually MNCs, want to come to India. We should really lay out the red carpet for them, get this investment home, get jobs on the back of that. I think that's sort of our big solution. Two things to do for this. Number one, policy certainty. You can't keep increasing import tariff and getting so much of policy uncertainty. No investor will come. So keep import tariffs low and go and announce it out loud that we don't want to increase our import tariffs anymore. Sign a lot of deep FTAs, particularly with big countries, with big regional blocks. I think these are very important. And number two, if you're going to give all of that manufacturing subsidies, which we are through the PLI scheme, make the fine print a little easier to abide by. Right now, many of the fine print make a go decision into a no-go decision. I think if we can do all of this, get investment to kickstart, we can really create the jobs that we need.
I hope the finance minister is listening to you. She's obviously got her budget already in place. But Rajiv Kumar, if you had one suggestion, what would it be? A solution. Give us what you believe is a concrete solution, where to start.
You have to start, like the survey says, at the bottom, at the ground level, at the bottom level. And there, by that, I mean that you got to actually make doing business in India easy and simple at the ground level. Take away the regulatory and compliance burden. The Prime Minister announced that there were 60,000 of them, to be removed. I don't think too many of them have been removed. The ordinary businessman, the entrepreneur, the private sector still finds doing business not as easy as it should be. It doesn't find the government coming in support of it. That's the first thing that you need to do. You have to decriminalize a lot of these provisions that our entrepreneurs face from day to day, where they can be sent to jail at a drop of a hat almost. Now you've got to remove that. What you've got to do is to ensure that the labor laws that have been there and have been waiting to be codified for the last 6 years are finally codified, so there is sufficient flexibility so that the entrepreneurs don't find it easy don't find the incentive to replace labor with capital, especially in a situation where new technology makes it very tempting to do so. So those are the bottom of the pyramid, the sort of ground level reforms that we should do. But one more, Rajdeep, before you go. I have been propagating, and I've just read in the survey that the subsidies to the agricultural sector have doubled over the last 2 years. And they're all for chemical fertilizer and pesticide. They are converting our land into a desert. Our organic carbon content has been reduced to 0.8% when 1.5% is required to keep the land edible. I've been arguing and advocating a paradigm shift to what I call zero chemical agriculture, and at least the farmers who are practicing non-chemical agriculture be given the same subsidy that per acre, which the farmers using chemicals are doing. That's the sort of beginning that you want to make to make our agriculture productive and globally competitive, reduce costs, and make farmers' income go up, because they actually haven't gone up the way we had promised them that they would. So that's the beginning. So those are the two sets: ease of doing business, which will promote exports, and starting a whole paradigm shift in agriculture, getting agriculture investment, making agro-processing, etc. Go down, and take that forward. But only that will help the bottom of the pyramid, which will raise consumption and then raise demand.
Madan Sabnavis, your solution, where would you start?
I'd say there are 3 points which I have out here. Number one is we need to commercialize agriculture. So I think the economic survey says that over 40% of our labor force is in agriculture, which means we have to make sure that they become agriculture as a remunerative business. So for that, I think we need to revisit the farm laws, which were excellent laws. There's, of course, the politics of it. I think that needs to be resolved, but I think in the next 5 years, we should be working towards addressing this issue. Number two, as we're talking of a bottoms-up kind of an approach, we need to look at the MSME. So I think a PLI scheme for MSMEs exclusively is something which will work, because again, the SMEs are a segment which contribute to industrial output, GDP growth, employment, and exports. So I think that will address the issue. And the third issue which has to be addressed, to my mind, is in terms of trade policy for agriculture. When I say trade policy for agriculture, it's essentially a case of saying, how do I do best when it comes to my export bans, which I keep having? For example, when we suddenly say there's an export ban on wheat, there's an export ban on rice, the farmers get contradictory signals. Am I to grow more? Am I to grow less? And this will also help to address the issue of inflation. Today, we all know that inflation is going up primarily because of food inflation. If I have a policy in place, I have an market intelligence in place, I know that the production is going to falter. Go in for imports immediately. So in this context, I say that futures trading in agricultural commodities, which is banned for most of the commodities, needs to be revoked. We send very good signals about a likely crop. That is when the government can actually intervene and reckon the imports so that you're able to get away from this crisis-like situation, which we have in pulses, edible oils, maybe at times even for things like rice and wheat at certain points of time. So these are the 3 steps.
Okay, I'm giving a final word to you, Professor Mehrotra, because you've heard lots of solutions, and I must confess, many of them politically difficult, as we saw with farm laws. Others have been known for a while, but haven't been acted upon. Some out-of-the-box solutions suggested as well. Give me your final solutions to really, in a sense, create this whole concept of inclusive growth.
Thank you. Of course, 2 sets of solutions. First, we need an industrial policy. The first thing that we need in the industrial policy is to make sure that our real effective exchange rate does not appreciate. Unfortunately, under this government, it has been appreciating. It has adversely affected exports. I think that Rajiv was rightly hinting at. And in addition, it has just encouraged more and more imports. Second, we need not a PLI for X, Y, and Z. That's simply encouraging more subsidies. What we need is a horizontal industrial policy. I could elaborate that it cannot be a sectoral industrial policy because you're giving all these decisions back to the bureaucrats, license permit Raj, back again. Third, Madan was absolutely spot on. I think the fact of the matter is that the MSMEs have suffered very hard since the three policy shocks of this government, Demon, badly designed GST, and a national lockdown. So the fact of the matter is the ASU's data just released has demonstrated beyond a shadow of doubt how badly they were impacted. And it's agriculture is not, we then secondly—
I have 30 seconds.
You will get, I'll finish in 25. We also need agricultural policy. That does not mean reforms. What it means is that you put agriculture first in the investment strategy, in public investment. Don't build in expressways to nowhere. If you invest in agriculture, public investment, you're going to get productivity rises, which you're not getting with the subsidies, etc., that Rajiv was rightly pointing to.
Okay, let's leave it there. Clearly, all of you have given plenty of food for thought, and it also will build into, of course, the budget discussions that take place tomorrow. The economic survey has only given a sense of the challenges that really still lie ahead of this government. I appreciate all my guests joining us here on their analysis on the survey this evening. Thank you so much.